there was all this chat about the Americans are going to be the main opposition, and they obviously like got out in front. I remember the cop was like, right, race plan out the window. We're just going to have to go now. This is like 200 metres into the race. And I was like, well, I can't remember what the race plan was. And I think we got back sort of level at some point in the race. But then I think for the last like 100, 250 metres, I'd completely checked out. You know, I got to the finish line, but I was in a pretty bad state. So we won a silver. I can remember like saying, oh, I don't feel too good. We rowed over to the pontoon to get out of the boat, at which point I tried to get out of the boat and collapsed. And the next thing I can remember was I woke up like with the oxygen mask on, like in the medal rostrum, and Jurgen was like leaning over me.
Loving it.
Yeah, absolutely loving it. That's so good.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Today's guest is a double Olympic medalist, Rick Egington. Please welcome to the show.
Hi guys, you alright?
Yeah, thanks for coming. Well, again, meeting here. I think Pete just mentioned we've done like 16 episodes in the Leander Library now.
It's pretty good.
It's just very convenient, obviously.
It's a very good studio for a podcast, isn't it?
No waitress service though, which is...
Yeah. No, you have to pay to book it out.
We need to get more Patreon supporters for that.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
we wanted to say thanks to 3 people who have supported us in the last week. I'd like to say thank you to Lucy, Casey Mahon, and Erica. Thank you for buying us coffees. And yeah, Tom wanted to say a few words about Patreon.
yeah, it's up now, and I think it starts at like £5 a month. We do an episode each week, so if you think that this is worth £1.25, it would be pretty cool to do that. Or if you just want to do like a one-off thing, we've got the Buy Me a Coffee. All the links are on there, aren't there? Just so we can keep doing this and maybe get a bit further afield. We were just talking before about maybe getting into Europe and speaking to some people there. So yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, but as for today, we thought of no one better to bring on the show than the man himself.
It's been a long time coming again, in the making. You found yourself back in the rowing world. I thought you were out.
You're never out, are you? Never out. Even though I retired in 2012, my life was still dictated to by the rowing program, because my girlfriend and now wife decided to carry on to Rio and then Tokyo got delayed. So I think I only really had a break of about a year.
Yeah,
where there was not much rowing chat.
I think it'd definitely interesting to get into that, like the opinion of what it's like to be a partner of a high performance rower, whilst being one yourself, and also afterwards. But starting as we normally do, it's always really interesting to find out how you got into rowing in the first place.
So, bad luck?
Yeah?
No, not at all. No. I was very lucky to find rowing, I think. But I'd finished school, 16. I hadn't done the greatest with my grades, to be fair, because I was more interested in messing about. Not anything constructive, but just, I didn't think that there's like schoolwork was great, so it didn't do brilliantly. So I was like, I have to do a couple of resits here for GCSEs, which like looking back, I was like, how did you not do well at GCSE levels? I must have done the square root of sod all work. So I went to college, and I was actually a maths teacher. They offered rowing on the program for like Wednesday afternoons. I mean, I loved sport and I did everything to a good start. I played rugby in the winter and athletics in the summer. I was good at lots of sports and mountain biking and stuff. So obviously in the UK, when you're beyond 16, it's like not compulsory, but I loved sport, and I was good at lots of sports, but not really excellent. So I thought I'll give rowing a try, and a couple of the lads that I'd sort of started were in some of my classes, they were going, so I just went along with them just because I was like, otherwise, I'd just go home on Wednesday afternoon and, not do anything constructive. So
what club was it?
So it was at Warrington Rowing Club.
Okay.
But it was through college.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just went down with them it was a Wednesday afternoon. I think we got the Priestley College bus, which Tom, you'll appreciate, was like one of those, like a mid-90s VW one, pale blue, probably like the perfect car for you. I think it had a 1.4 litre engine. We only had to go like 2 miles to the rowing club, but I was like, literally, if we're going to walk there faster. And that was, Warrington Rowing Club was where I went there. So for anyone that doesn't know Warrington, it sits between Manchester and Liverpool.
Oh, yeah.
It's, rowed on the Mersey, which was one of the only rivers I've ever been on that had a 180-degree bend in it.
Really?
But fantastic, and I got to go down there. And I think on the first ever time I went down, we had a look at an 8, and, we didn't actually go out rowing. And then we did a 2,500 metre ergo test.
That's that old school test. That's still in Poland, right?
No.
Someone was telling me they still do that 2.5.
So it was a 2,500 metre ergo test, which I think looking back I had quite an exotic technique. So I'd never rowed or been on an ergo before in my life. So I remember thinking that it was like, if I pull it up to my neck, that's got to be better. But I've quickly learned that wasn't. But yeah, we did a few sessions with college. But then I decided to go. I had one of my friends from primary school actually lived like 3 doors away from me, and his dad and him both rowed at Warrington Rowing Club as a hobby. So I just went down one, I think Sunday morning, down to the rowing club, and started having a go. I had to go in one of those singles, what we used to call them playboats. Absolute comedy, one that you couldn't like tip up. We just got interested, and there was two other guys, 2 brothers that had started rowing at a similar time. Mike Dostal, who now is, if anyone follows Hydro, he's called Mike Hydro, and his younger brother Phil, and my other mate from down the road, John Boy. So we got this like little 4 together, and there was one guy there called Richard Sinnott, who sort of got hold of us. He was the coach at Warrington Rowing Club, and he got us doing some form of training program together. I mean, when I say training program, it was very loose, but was some structured training. So yeah, it was started there with that 4 guys, and my coach Richard. And yeah, that's probably what was just hanging around with your mates, right? They became my best friends, and they're still my best friends to this day. So, that's how I started, like really lucky, just the total luck in a way. It wasn't any conscious decision by myself to do something.
And then, so like as a junior, then was that just kind of for fun, or did it start getting serious quite quickly? I guess if you got a good group.
If I was 17 to just turned 17, I had no real idea. Like we started training, started doing a few races. I'm trying to think what our first ever race was. I think it was Northwich. It was like either Chester Head or Northwich Head, and I think actually now it might have been Chester Head, where we rode in an 8 with
quite a big one,
4 older guys. Oh, yeah. It was absolute. We hadn't been rowing very long, so it was absolute comedy. I'd love to see, in the days no one was really videoing them, but it must have looked horrendous. And then we did like the second races. So it was, we were serious. We enjoyed training and pushing ourselves. So it did get. No, it was never serious. I don't think it was, but we trained fairly hard. Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
So, really. Like compared to other sports, what is it that kept you coming back to rowing?
I think pretty early on, I found that in rowing you can push yourself harder than in any other sport. Rugby players, they can hit each other hard, but in rowing you can absolutely melt yourself physically, and you can dig yourself into a grave, and it's a big test of how mentally tough you are.
Yeah,
and you sort of. Yeah, that sort of. I enjoyed the bleep test at school, and I was always the best at it because I'd just keep going. So I think for me, I found the sort of solace in that, and I think, my coach Richard Sinnott, actually, he was one of the first people that said to me, about anything. Like you could be really, if you applied yourself, you could be actually really good at this. You could achieve something. And I've got a sister, younger sister than me, who's always the academic. She's one of them really annoying people, right? That's good at everything. She's like a massive mentor to me. Really close. But she's, when you're younger and you're at school and they were like, oh, your sister's so good, why are you such an arsehole? And she answered that, right? I sort of rebelled against authority figures a little bit at school, especially at school. But then I found probably my own identity with rowing, right? It was my sort of, my thing. And then...
That's good. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of stories, like, it's as simple as what you said, like one piece of luck, one good friend to introduce you, one coach that took an interest, one person that says you could be good at this. Like for a lot of people, there's not a lot of people saying that.
And the fact that the barrier to improve is just yourself. If you want to get better, you can just put more in and you instantly see results on the ergo, etc.
I always struggle with that in like team sports. Like if I'd had a good game, but we lost, I was expected to be like, we've all got to be unhappy on the coach back. Whereas like in rowing, it was only always about my performance, like on the ergo stuff. Obviously in the crew boat, it's a bit different, but no, it's good. So then what sort of made you start to think that you wanted to take it further?
I think, looking back now, we started like right at the start of 96. So then Atlanta came up and I've been rowing like 6 or 7 months. And obviously I think it's all subconsciously, right? And I saw Matthew and Steve win.
Yeah.
And I thought Steve was cool because he was like, if you watch his interview and when he finished, he's like swearing and, it was like, I thought, this guy's pretty cool, right? And he was like, Matthew and Steve were absolutely like, Jurgen had really trained them hard from that Barcelona period so he'd had a 4-year block and they'd done a lot of work. They were just jacked. So I was like, he's jacked and he swears. I mean,
that's what I want.
I want a bit of that.
And they were that was the only goal that came.
That was the only goal. Yeah, and I think, then, like, not at the time, but I was like, subconsciously, I thought it was cool, I didn't say, I want to go to the Olympics, or, that was my epiphany, or whatever. That was none of that nonsense. I just really liked watching it and took more of an interest, right, in Olympic sport then, and you probably thought, it's pretty cool to do that, and then just went back to rowing in our 4 and singles.
Did you much success with them, or was it a bit later when you sort of started seeing some success?
No, we had, I think, I heard actually when you had Ross on the show and you were like, okay, what was like one race you'd like to go back and redo? You had that question.
Yeah.
Got me thinking. And I was like, do you know what? I'd probably go back and do that novice 4 at Northwich Regatta. I think I caught like 2 crabs in it, overhead ones, boat stoppers, but...
All right, losing your novice status is.
I think I'd go back. I think I'd go back and do that because, do you know what? If we were 4 lads having a great, 4 lads rowing, it's just different. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Wherever you are, it's a different setting. Whether you're at the Olympics or whatever. At that time, that was my Olympic. So I'd probably go back and do that one. I think. So but it was all regional. I think I did a 2K ergo test and did 608 as like 17-year-old or 611 I think, and people start saying,
it's pretty big at that time.
You were quite, you could be quite good at this if you can learn to row. At which time I was appalling at rowing. And I've got to say, like, technically out of the 4 of us, I was atrocious.
So did you get a lot of stick?
Yeah. Well, they were. Those 3 guys that I rowed with, they were amazing, right? They were really patient with them because I'd have been like, I don't want to row with this muppet. For sure. I think like even now, like Mike was probably one of the best natural athletes I ever rowed with. He did a little bit on the lightweight team.
Oh, yeah.
Rowed in Notts County, but he was probably not quite big enough to make it as heavyweight and a bit too big as to be a long-term lightweight. But he was, he'd switch from, he's done cycling, at a high level. He's done he's kayaked or canoed for the US. You know, so he's just they were just natural athletes as well. So yeah, we had that sort of, we had like success, and I think we won like, not city regatta double. And everyone I remember everyone talking about, you get these amazing pots, you know, they're like clay, grey. You know, I think I've got one still that's got pens in it somewhere. And then we tried to qualify for Henley in the double, me and Mike. We didn't get through. But yeah, it was great, you know, even going to qualifiers, camping at Swiss Farm, going to those regattas, like, you know.
So after a couple 17-year-olds, you tried to qualify for the doubles at Henley, which is a senior event.
18 then, so it was a year later, 18, so we tried to qualify the double.
But that's a senior event.
Yeah. Well, they only had one. We didn't qualify, but it was great, you know. And doing those regattas like Iron Bridge, Ross on White, we'd all just go. We'd get in. I think he had Mike would drive because he was only on a driving license. He had this Citroen ZX, like a white one with yellow stripes. We thought it was the coolest car ever. So my dad had this tent. It was like an inflatable tent that he bought second hand when he was like 20 or 18 or something, and we'd turn up and pump it up. There was 4 of us in it. It was absolutely amazing. All we'd take for the weekend would be bacon and bread and a fry pan. Absolutely quality diet of champions.
Yeah. We've had so many people on here, athletes, like who after their own career, who say, I eat so much more healthy now than I ever did as an athlete. And I look back and think, like, how bad was that diet? But you could just get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't know any better. Well, yeah, it was, so I'd say we had I would think it was amazingly successful, and it was, because it gives my love of rowing.
Yeah.
And some of our best friends I've got now, but we were we were successful in regional, you know, not massively important regattas.
It doesn't matter, does it? Like you said at the time, whatever your Olympics is your Olympic, you know. When you're trying to achieve a standard you've never done before, it doesn't really matter. It's not about, and that's what rowing's kind of all about. Like, it's really measure yourself on your own performance, and whether you win or lose. Talk again, you know, the new way of looking at it. It's process driven and all that, but just back in the day when you're having fun, it's just you know, pushing yourself, achieving something new.
You're more likely to carry on, right, if you're having a good time.
I've noticed,
young, right?
Definitely. You can't, if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to do it. And I've noticed from coaching, there's a real, when I've got it right, there's this sort of fine line by making it structured and making the training difficult, but still fun. And then you get this tipping point when you're not having to beg them to come to more sessions. They're asking you for more sessions. Yeah. If you can let them have enough fun with it and just not get too serious too quick. But yeah, then you can kind of fall for it.
Yeah, in terms of also making every novice regatta your Olympics, don't we always say you can only beat whoever turns up, right? And then your ergo scores from back in those days, they still hold up today very, very well in the same age bracket.
So what is under 23? Is it under 6'10" now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he did that as a 17-year-old, 25 years ago or something.
It was just the learning to row that was the more difficult one, right?
Yeah.
That was the
That took me a bit longer as well.
Were you naturally tall from the junior age, or did you grow after you started rowing as well?
I probably, I mean, I was on the tallish side, but then, when I started rowing, you know, that year, 16, 17, 18, I really shot up in size, and you start throwing some weights around as well. And,
nice.
It's, you start changing, you know. I was scrawny as a youngster, and then people didn't recognize me after a couple of years, because even now, if I touch the weights, I can start, even as I'm 45 now, and I'm I've probably got no testosterone anymore. I can still put on some bulk, but I'm the next time, oh God, my shoulder.
I'm going to have a great weight session, left shoulder. No.
Yeah. So then what was the decision to join? I think it was the Leander development program that you
so I think my coach, I keep calling him Richard, but we were, we always had a nickname Shaky. So it was, he was like, he sat down and he was good. He was really great. He was like, look, if you want to go any further, you're going to have to move out of, you can't do it at Warrington Rowing Club.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the great attributes of him, actually. He's very much like, I can take you here, but then you're going to have to go somewhere else, right? And a lot of coaches are not like that, right?
Difficult to let your best.
He's like, you need to go, and you need to go down south. And I was like, what? The south? Oh, God, I'm not sure I can go there. It's absolutely awful. Saying that 20 odd years later, I'm living in Henley. So I was like, and then it's about time you're doing like your UCAS form and stuff. And I probably didn't want to go to university, if I'm honest. I was like, I'm not sure that's for me. Yeah. I'll probably just stay, I almost dread to think actually what I would be doing, like if I hadn't taken on rowing. So I don't think I would have gone to university. I probably would have been still living like in my local town. I probably wouldn't have got definitely wouldn't have been married to Vicky. So,
I had a
fat girl in Warrington. God, this is what could have happened.
I had a place at Brooks for geography and town planning. And I fucking hated geography, but it was the only thing I got a decent grade in. Yeah. And then my dad had a mate who was like a town planner, because their dad was like, you can't just fucking do geography. That's like colouring in maps. Like, you need to apply it. And I just think, I'm so glad I didn't go, because I would,
So, but then I applied to the University of London. I was like, that's it. I'm going to go to UL. I'll row there, or at the University in London, because I'd met up with Martin McElroy, and who coached the Sydney. And he was like, I think you should come to London. Brooks maybe at the time was doing some great stuff, but I'll go to London. So I was like, filled in the application form, sent it off. And they were like, you need to come for an interview in London. I was like, I'd never even been to London. So I was like, this is great. I'll book a train down. It was like 18 quid.
Get the
train down to London. And I was like, these people in London, they get this thing called a tube everywhere. What a load of idiots. I bought my dad bought me the A to Z, little mini one. This is before like Google Maps and stuff, so I shoved it in my pocket. And I remember pulling into the train station in Euston, getting out, and I was like, I don't need this A to Z. I'll just ask someone what the way to the Strand is. I remember asking some random guy, and I said, can you tell me possibly the way to the Strand? He couldn't speak English. So I was like,
I thought you were going to say he told you to fuck off.
No, he didn't actually. No. There were people a bit more polite back then. But so I was like, this isn't good. Ask someone else. They were like, everyone's in a rush. Everyone hates, if you speak to someone in London, they might think you're a paedophile or something. So I was like, I'm just, should I get somewhere? So I figured out I'm going to have to get the tube. I turned up late to the interview, like about an hour late, by which point I'd already decided that London was not for me.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, this is not for me. Did the interview. I think I said, have you got any questions? I asked them about the rowing club, and they were like, this is an environmental science department, not the sports clubs. Which I was like, I couldn't understand why they didn't know any of this. So I left there going, it's not for me. I don't think I want to do this. So eventually, I don't know what happened in the interim, but I was like, my coach, another one of my coaches at the time, he was one of the physiologists, he was doing physiology degree at Liverpool. He'd said, oh, well, I know someone, coaches at Leander, maybe you should have a chat with them because it's close to the University of Reading. And of course, Mike, one of my best friends who I rowed with, he went to Nottingham University, and he'd gone the year before we had. So I think me and his younger brother, we got the train down when we were on half term for like 3 days, and went on the smash at the University of Nottingham, which is a big campus university, and we thought it was the best thing ever. We were ready just to move into his room. We went down there for like 3 days on the smash. shaved his eyebrow off, and I think Phil wet his bed. So we thought it was great, and I was like, yeah, you could see this, go right at the end, go to University of Reading. So I went through clearing and ended up like coming here, starting here in like 98, 99. Well, of course, like I was first year at uni, I wasn't the most mature of individuals. I was like, well, you can go out and have 50p pints, or go to. And I was trying to do both, and it, and I ended up getting glandular fever, so I didn't row that much here. I tried a little bit, but didn't really work. But that's probably where I met, James and Matthew and Steve, training for Sydney, which was I remember. I think James was one of the first people I ever met, and it was when they were doing all this work here. So in like 99, where they got the the extended. I don't know what Leander Club looked before this, but they were doing all that work. So James was one of the first people that I met, and he was so. I remember the crew room was in a porter cabin down on where the boats are stored, near where the decking is. And James was one of the first people that spoke to me. He was such, he asked just some, I think he asked me what football team I supported, and at the time he took the piss out of me for being a Man City fan, which like, boots on the other foot now, mate. I haven't seen him for a year or so. So, but yeah, that was, he made me feel really welcome and gave me a bit of kit. Just a really nice guy, and I think, eventually I became the captain here. I always go back to that thought of like when I met him and how welcoming he was to me. I think that was what I was like. Anyone that comes in here as a potential athlete or whatever, that was really important to me. So, it has such a lasting effect, and I'll always be, James's probably biggest fan because of that,
Yeah, that's good.
What a legend.
I'm sure I've told this before. The first person I came for like a trial weekend, so I turned up on a Friday night, and they put me in the crew room and no one was around, and Ian Lawson walks in, who has got legs like trees, orders a crew main. Whilst he's waiting for his crew main, butters 6 pieces of bread.
Why bread? Why?
The crew main turns out, which to describe to anyone who hasn't seen, back in the old day, the old Leander crew main was probably about 3 portions of food in one giant dish. Smashes the whole thing with 6 pieces of bread and butter, and then the next time the waitress come in, says, "Can I get a refill?" And I was just like, "Whoa, okay, we're here."
Yeah, that was Ian for you. That's pretty like Ian's. Anyone that doesn't know Ian, he's a typical Yorkshireman, right? Isn't it? I've got some great stories about Ian. I don't know if we've got time to go into today, but I always imagine if I saw him walking down the street now with 2 ferrets on a lead, I would be like, yeah, it's Ian. Typical Yorkshireman, right? But he trained hard, right? And he was his own, he had his own identity.
I just remember like every year he had like a different, so like one year, like we turn up in September and he's like, "It's weights, boys, it's weights. It's all about weights." Like he hadn't been on the water for like 3 months. He's just doing like back-to-back weight session.
Nice.
And then like the next year he comes in and it was all about like the bike. And like there was always like some other new thing that
I can remember once with him, like, because he was so strong at back squats. He just loved back squats. I mean, we used to call him Tina Turner sometimes because he had like such a massive arse. But he loved doing back squats, and he'd like wander in, and anyone didn't know him, he'd always wear this like old Durham lycra that had holes in it, and he was just like, and he like set up that old squat rack. Yeah.
With the bent bar. We thought he bent
like,
it.
Load it up with like, he'd start 140 kg, and he would have no shoes on, I don't have shoes, and he would squat like right down to the floor. Yeah. And he'd be like, and he thought his eyes were going to pop out of his head, and we thought he was going to have a prolapse. But he was so strong. He was just like, and he'd be like, but Jurgen was like, look, Ian was always like, he'd rig his boat. If he's going out in a quad, he'd want to re-rig the whole, just for himself. And I remember Jurgen actually was like, Ian, no more back squats, right? I mean, the back squat, your strokes got a bit short. And we need to try and, develop your quads. Your strokes got a bit too short. All right, I'll do front squats. And he'd wander in set up the front squat bar. He put like 2 greens on, 40 kilos, and then just go, I can't do it, and then go back to doing bank squats. And Jurgen walked in, saw him. I think he absolutely tore him a new one. But Jurgen had such respect for him because of the way he trained. It was frustrating. I mean, great and frustrating in equal measure.
Yeah. He was a different beast.
But yeah, he was an inexperienced for your first person that you met here.
Yeah. And then for me, a similar story to you, like the captain when I joined was Mark Hunter, and first time I met him, he was lovely.
Yeah.
I think also it's that weekend. I'm sure it's long enough ago that no one will get in trouble for it. I'd met him and he was saying hi, and I said, "Oh, no, what are you doing now?" He's like, "Oh, I've got to have a meeting with the captain because there was a wedding in this weekend, and a bunch of the rowers had gone out and got pissed, and then jumped in had been skinny dipping in the river, and were like running around the club, and all the rooms were like booked out by this wedding. He spent a lot of money." And I
remember that.
That's the other side of the Leander. I
was
both
captain
sides
when that happened.
Okay, so yeah. So was he?Maybe he was vice captain then. I can't remember what it was.
Well, there was probably something like that.
Yeah. I won't name any names.
I was just going to ask, so from seeing Redgrave and Pinson at the Olympics in Atlanta to then sharing the same club with them 2 or 3 years later, what was that like as an experience? And actually being able to share the same changing rooms and chatting shit on the ergo, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so James got changed probably like next, like near me, or I got changed near him. So there was
half of the GB squad's rowing out of Leander.
Yeah, so Caversham didn't, the centralised programme didn't exist back then. So I think when I first joined, so Ed, Greg were training here as part of that 6 for the 4. But it was really great because you'd see it wasn't a centralised system, so it wasn't like so isolated. So you could get like, I don't know, it'd be like maybe, walking into, a novice going in to train next to an Olympic champion, right?
Yeah.
That was an amazing thing, right? And I probably took it for granted and still did. But like now, none of the athletes get that. They come here and there's some progression, but you don't get the real like Olympic champion training data. Of course, they were doing different sessions. But you got to see actually, what it's sort of their attitude to how they're doing. And of course, like Jurgen, like floating around and asking you all those questions and things like that. So yeah, I was really sort of very beneficial.
Yeah, it's good. Still, yeah, back when I did like 07, 08, I remember at 08, just after Beijing, so it was like my second year at Leander, like in September, like Steve Williams coming to sit down, do the yoga next to me and just being like, don't freak out. Like, I just watched this guy win gold. Like, this is insane.
To me, that's basically a similar memory of guys like you, Partridge, Steve Williams coming down and training. When I used to do the junior program, so we'd like have sessions a little bit later in the day. So when you guys would like come down and like either smash out an ergo or do some weight sessions, it was a really cool experience. And then to go into the crew rooms again, see how much you guys eat, etc. It's just so fun to like mix
getting to mix with them, sitting them in the crew room. You don't realise how effective that is. And if you watch, I was watching that series that's on the Man City winning the treble, and Pep has some of the academy players playing with the senior guys, even though they're so far, they're playing the same team at all, but that sort of like subconscious mentoring, you see it probably is endemic in all like high performance environments.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
This might be a bit of a sidetrack, but how would you compare someone like Pep to Jurgen? Obviously, you've worked with Jurgen, but you're a Man City fan and you've seen the documentaries with Pep, etc. Like, are there any similarities in like running high performance squads that you can see?
Yeah, I mean, I think in anyone that's like really like high performance, and you think of those greats in the coaching, Jurgen's is the greatest probably. If you put it that, he's won in. He's probably the greatest sports coach in any sport of all time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I don't think, someone like agreement, mate, but, probably an idiot.
Yeah, like people hold like, Alex Ferguson up because he like won the triple.
But, yeah.
But it's like, that's just 1 year. Like, if you...
That, again, with Ferguson, that's one club, whereas Pep's gone... Yeah, and you see, you don't see everything, right? But with Jurgen, I was with him day in, day out, right? But you see that relentless pursuit, I can remember going into Caversham, he'd always be here before, Jurgen would always be there before everyone.
Nice.
He'd always be there. And I remember I was like, do you know what? And he always had in Caversham, he had his parking spot. It wasn't his parking spot, but it was his parking spot. And I was like, do you know what? I'd really like to get here one day before him and steal his parking spot just to see, like, how he would react to that.
Poke the bear.
Yeah, just for comedy value, Well, he'd always be there. He'd be there at 7, just before 7.
I think for someone who like from the outside looks quite sort of like uninterested and uninvolved, actually is like the most interested and most involved. Yeah. I did one of the Sierra Nevada senior camps when I was under 23, with Sachi, and like he had a conversation with us like halfway through a camp, and he knew like our egg scores and stuff. And I was like, what? Like, how?
He just doesn't. He hasn't got time for
idle chat,
things that are like not important, right? They'll sit around bullshitting. It's not interested in that, right? Which is.
So you didn't get to steal his parking spot after all?
No. I thought about it and being really great. Well, I was like, I better not do that then.
That would be great.
So coming back to Leander, so 99 you said you joined?
So yeah, like 99. And then, but I didn't, that period of university, I didn't, I think in the second year I rowed at University of Reading for the university. Yeah. And then I didn't really row my final year of university because I was so far behind. I was like, I actually have to do some work this year if I want to get a degree.
So coming out of uni, would that have been the year then when you won Thames Cup?
So 2001 I graduated and then I came back here, but there had been a big change. So Mark Banks had come in.
Ah, yeah.
So Banksy had come in. I didn't really know Banksy. I just knew he was from Rochdale, from Hollingworth Lake, and I knew he was from the Northwest, so I assumed he'd be a good lad. Yeah. How wrong I was. So I joined in with that group. It's like September, October 2001, and there was a big group. There was quite a big group of us, actually. And I didn't really know anything about. I'd raced at Henley, but I didn't really know its sort of significance, maybe, because I was just a bit naive. And then it was like, well, we want to get a crew together to do the Thames Cup. I was like, what's that?
I think naivety can sometimes help.
Yeah.
Scare yourself out of it. Yeah.
But they all, there was I'm trying to think of a group that was here. So yeah, like Quirky was here, Rossi, Dave Curry was here. It was quite a big group of us. Yeah,
Beachy
was here. Beachy was in the team, but he was around a little bit because it wasn't so centralized. It wasn't centralized at all back then. Chris Lloyd. Anyone remember?
Ivor Lloyd's son.
Ivor Lloyd's son.
Oh, okay.
Ceres, Colbert.
Yeah.
A big group of us, enough of us to make an 8. So I started training here, and I was reasonable in the single. So I got sculling around one of those Eton Phoenix singles, and a typical session would be like, go out and do 16k first of all. I was like, this is wild. I don't really training like this before. But we had a real good bunch, Seraph had come over from Ireland, was about 27 at the time, dentist, medicine degree, one of the most driven people you've ever met in your life. And he'd also sort of taught himself to row, but he really sort of solidified us as a group, and he was wanting to train a bit like maybe Clive was when you were here, just solidified the group, wanted to train, wouldn't let you, ever let off a stroke or a rep. And then they got a real sort of club vibe going.
Unless it was agreed, Clive used to set the pace as well sometimes.
Yeah.
If he wasn't feeling too hot.
then we started racing, and then was like, well, I thought maybe I could make the Thames Cup. I was pretty rough, and we did some racing that summer, and then we got to that was like my first serious Henley. We managed to win the Thames Cup. That's probably like a real turning point for me.
Yeah,
because I actually realised the importance, and actually, even though you won one of the lower events, you were like, well, actually, there's so much more to do in the sport if you've got the capacity. Like, there's an Olympic final for everyone, whatever level you are.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I was like, that was when I realised, actually, like, I'm going to have to really start taking it a bit more seriously and be a bit less of a joker.
Did you feel the potential to, like, for example, be winning events like the Grand, etc. at the time?
No, not really. I think I had a more narcissistic view that, I was thinking, I could win this and then could win that. I wasn't really bothered what anyone else was doing. I should admit that, but I've just done it.
Yeah.
But you obviously were, like you said, you sort of maybe not taking it as seriously, but by 2003, you're sort of involved in GB stuff. So that area between 02 and 03 obviously was a big change, not necessarily in your...
So we had one Henley, Thames Cup, and then there was the Commonwealth Regatta.
Yeah.
So me, Seraph, Chris Lloyd, and Colin Smith. We did a Commonwealth for Cox 4. We trained in that all summer, so we finished Henley, and then we started rowing in the 4. And that was great. Sid Rand was coaching us, and Sid's like sadly not here or anyway, but he was one of those people that was like, he's a really old, mystical person, obviously, but lived around the world and had like really charismatic guy. I think he'd done the like Commonwealth British Empire Games in the 50s and was been in the final of the Diamonds numerous times. So we always had like great stories about rowing and was quite mystical about like how to row, which was really interesting. Like he's like an amazing character for rowing, right? And he was one of them people that he was quite a sort of well-to-do character, but he could sort of, he's one of them amazing people that could talk to people on so many different levels.
Yeah.
So he sort of, injected that sort of love for rowing for me, because he coached me in the Thames Cup as well. So I had him all season, and Sid was great. I know, 2002, Matthew and James was training in their pair. They hadn't gone so well in Lucerne, so we'd be out in the 8, they'd be out in their pair, and Matthew and James would always ask Sid his like opinion on what they were doing. What do you think? And I know Jurgen had a massive respect for Sid, because Sid had coached in 99. I think he coached Stevie in the pair in 99 in St. Catherine's. So, Sid was like one of these characters of rowing. It was just great fun. And then we did the Commonwealth. So we did Henley and trained all summer. Went and did a training camp in Nottingham, which was, it was such a laugh. It's such fun. We won that, and then probably like I thought, like, oh, all right, I'm entering these races, doing a bit of training and winning. This is great. It's not even that hard. But then it probably got a bit more. You got a lot more serious that year, because you come back then in 2002, autumn 2002, and I'm back in the club program. A few people had stopped, but the club group carried on. Obviously I did a lot more work in singles, and I started conditioning myself a bit more, doing a lot more structured training, and I started getting some all right results. I think I got invited to final trials. Jurgen was obviously here as well. I did an all right ergo test. I'm trying to think what I did. I think maybe did 56 or something in my ergo test. So that wasn't too bad. I did final trials in the single. I didn't make the A. I missed out on the A final. But I remember the B final. I got the start right. I was really like, I could fluke this amazing start. It was a total fluke. It had nothing to do with skill. And I just was like, kept going. And I always remember, like, Mark Banksy was like, well, if you're 3 lengths up in a single, it doesn't mean you're going to win. So you got to go for more. So I kept going for more and more and more. And I was like 4 lengths off. I can't even remember. I was a long way up. But then I just like imploded at 1750. Absolutely imploded. Not that I can really remember. I just remember that I feeling stationary and everyone coming past me. So like Monkey, Steve Rowbotham, and someone else there. I came 3rd or 4th in the end. I was like, where do I don't even know? I think JPM was coaching me. John Pilgrim Morris, who was around here for a long time. Like he was an amazing guy. He was a navigator on a Vulcan bomber.
Wow. So
I was like always interested in like, the Vulcan plane was something like I built an Airfix kit in one of them when I was little. Such an interesting guy, and he was like, that was amazing. And I was like, did I win? And I was like, and he's like, no, you came 4th. Something I was like, oh no. But that was like, Jurgen came up to me afterwards and was like, he was like, well done, that was really good. I was like, what didn't do, I blew up. But it's like Neil Young's song, isn't there? It's better to burn out than fade away. But Jurgen quite likes that song. And then that was probably then like Jurgen. I was probably on Jurgen's sort of radar as someone that was, had his like physical attributes that he liked. He wanted that. He also his parameters that he wanted to lift weights. 100 kilo bench pull, 100 kilo, at least 100 on the press, and then power clean 100 kilo and those ergo scores. Like he has these parameters of theoretical athletes that he has. So I fell into the into the middle of that, so to speak.
Someone who's not afraid to go out hard and stay ahead, even if it means that they're going to implode. That's probably the characteristic that he wants, right? Because he can teach you the endurance, but you can't teach someone that mentally that they kind of like have to have it.
But I think it all came down to just like Banksy saying, if you've got 3 lengths, it's not enough, and fluking the start of this amazing start. But I can remember it. I can remember it now. Yeah, it was.
I did that we did that in the pair in final trials. Me and James Orme, like went off like a bat out.
UT1 champion of the world, or
we led Hodge Reed to like the K. And then the bollocking we got from Banksy afterwards. Like, the fuck are you doing? Like, well, I mean, we qualified slowest into that final. Like, what else are you going to do? Like, you got to go for it. So 2003, first Senior Worlds in the Cox 4. How was that? Like, things getting more serious? Are you managed
So I'd done Henley for the club. We'd done it in the club quad, and we lost in the final. So then, losing a final is... Yeah, that probably makes it more serious as well then, because you won a final last year, but we didn't win it easily, but that success came in that year I trained. But so then to have probably looking back now, actually it was a bit of a eye opener, right? But I think we lost because we didn't row as well as we could have done, rather than physically we moved on a lot. But then the Cox 4 setup was, I originally wasn't supposed to be in it. I think Joe von Molson was supposed to be in it, but then Joe had some health issues, and he wasn't very well that year. So then eventually, they were like, we want to send a Cox 4, but we want to send it as a development boat. So we'll give you the opportunity to row in this Cox 4, and then you'll do a speed trial to see if you can go to the Worlds. So you won't go to Silveretta, or you won't go, but you will go to the Egberlet training camp, the pre-Worlds training camp. You'll do speed order there, and then if you show good speed, then you'll be, you'll go to the Worlds, but you'll be a spare. So for me, that was like, I was like, well, cool, that sounds pretty good to me. Get to go on a training camp, and they were like, we had to submit. Well, I didn't. We want to go on a training camp to David Tanner. We want to do it in England, so we had to go. We went to Ely, I think, started training, and there was Tom Stallard was in it, Kieran West, and James Livingstone, and they were all really good rowers, right? Kieran won an Olympic gold medal, and then he probably not had Harry Mahon or Martin coaching him afterwards, and he was probably never quite as good. And Tom they were world champions the year before, Tom and Kieran.
Yeah.
I don't think they really got on with Steve Gunn's program. And then James had come from Cambridge. So they were all like really, really good rowers, right? Really good. And then they were like, oh, yeah, you reckon we'll start putting this guy, he's going to try out Nick Egington. And then we're like, fucking hell, who is this?
Did you feel the pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I always did. I think that was one thing I was actually like, I was, for good and bad, I was always like, if it wasn't going well, it was my fault. Or if something wasn't going well, it was always my fault. Right through to the end of my rowing career, I think that sort of fear of failure or taking accountability for it not going so well was actually probably one thing that made me reasonably successful. But I can remember our first outing, it was like, oh, you're going to go down to Hampton, because Richard Bolton was coaching us. He was the Hampton coach, and I got in. They were obviously like, Rick, you're going to be at 2. Great. That's a perfect seat for me. Like that. They were out for a row. And obviously I'd been sculling all that year, so I hadn't really been rowing. And I definitely had a habit of following the arc of the oar out of the water. So I think Tom was behind me. Yeah, he must have been like, what on earth is this in front of me? Like, going out and there's the snake.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was not trying to do that. I'm sure it really pissed him off. And I think then him and James actually swapped seats. And then, a few years ago, James actually said to me when they swapped, Tom said to him, like, oh, pick your own path to the catch. But they were great, We went and trained in Ely because they were all Cambridge buffies, so to speak. So it was like, let's go on training camps at Ely. This is amazing. I was like, what, the Fenland Drains? And this is where Alan Partridge hangs out. So we went up there, trained, and it was great. They were really patient with me because I was pretty like technically rudimentary, but I had a good engine. So, but by the time we got to the Worlds, they got me rowing sort of vaguely in time and a bit better, more connected. So we got to go to Milan. I got to travel. I've never been to Italy before, so we got to go to the Milan World Championships, which was great.
Nice.
Obviously, still on mind. Looking back, I was like, go to the World Championships, and they called that we need to have a crew meeting, and I was like, I'm going to go out for a wander into Milan, wander to the shops, see what's going on. And I remember I came back and forgotten they had a meeting, and they were all in the foyer, and I turned up. So I was like, where have you been? You're late. And I was like, oh, sorry, but I've been out and bought a new belt. I bought this white snakeskin belt, which I thought was really cool.
Brits abroad.
Yeah, I bought a white snakeskin belt. I'm looking for like Les Battersby from Coronation Street. I thought it was really cool. And I was like, sorry guys, I'm late. Well, yeah, let's crack on. And I don't know whether they were despairing or sort of, they probably like enjoy it now, but at the time they're like, this guy is a complete joke. But it was a genuine mistake. I didn't want to go shopping. I just walked past the shop and was like, I'm buying that belt. It looks cool. Rather than go to the crew meeting. A bit like Balotelli when he went to the F1 instead of going to Mourinho's meeting. And he was like, yeah, I could go to meeting with you anytime. But, I can only go to the F1 when it's on. Obviously, I wasn't as cool to say that, but looking back, that's the way it felt to me.
Yeah. So 2003, still, that's just when Caversham's opening. So 03, you said you trained down here in the fall.
Hang on, we didn't hear about how the Worlds went.
Oh, yeah?
How did it go at the World Championships?
So, we had a heat. I can't remember. I literally can't remember how the heat went. I think we won the heat. Definitely. Yeah, I'm sure we won the heat. You might have to check that, but I'm sure we won. Anyway, we got into the final. I definitely know we were in the final. We had a race there. I can't remember. They had a race plan. I can't remember what it was. For me, it was like, don't catch a crowd, try not to lean out your rigger on the way forward. And then, but after like 200 meters, we got dropped by the Americans, and there was one guy in the American crew, I think he's called Luke McGee. He went to Oxford, so he'd done, like, he was went to Oxford, so there was a big, like, they were Cambridge Buffdies that I was rowing with.
Okay.
And they was like, we hate this guy's from Oxford. I was like, yeah, who is he? And they obviously, there was all this chat about, we hate, like, there was the big thing, the Americans are going to be the main opposition, and they obviously, like, got out in front. I remember the Cox, Pete Rudge was like, right, race plan out the window, we're just going to have to go now. This is like 200 meters into the race. And I was like, well, I can't remember what the race plan was, because it was almost like, just go off, pull as hard as we can, and then make it to the finish line. And I think we got back sort of level at some point in the race, but near the end. But then I think for the last, like, 100, 250 meters, I'd completely checked out. I got to the finish line, but I was in a pretty bad state. So we won a silver. I can remember, like, saying, I don't feel too good. We rowed over to the like pontoon to get out of the boat, at which point I tried to get out of the boat and collapsed. And the next thing I can remember was I woke up, like, with the oxygen mask on, like, in the medal rostrum, not, in this little room. They're like, can you go to the medal rostrum? And I was like, oh, I don't really know. And Jurgen was, like, leaning over me.
Loving it.
Yeah, absolutely loving it. That's so good. And I was like, was it?
Returned.
So again, it's another story of me blowing up. But it's great, they were so... I was so far behind them technically, but Jurgen gave me that opportunity, and they were patient enough with me to get the best out of it. Yeah. It was really hard. The training camp was really hard because I wasn't the best rower by any stretch of the mean, and I needed to improve. And I took a lot of responsibility to do that for myself, as you do. You're responsible for how you row. But we got there in the end, right? And it was great, a great stepping stone.
What a baptism of fire into your first senior worlds.
So looking back though now, like, I rowed here for a year and then went to the World Championships the next year. Like, you're like, actually looking back, like, at the time it felt it's taking me ages, it's taking me so long to do this. Like, I'm rubbish, I'm never going to get anywhere. And then, like, now I'm like, some of the guys, actually I did pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's really quick. So coming back from that, was that like, right, this is my job now? Are you getting on any kind of funding off that, or are you still sort of...
No, so I didn't get any funding at the time. So that was really cool, actually, because I was like, that year, I'd be doing a bit of cash in the hand work for one of the builders in Henley, because I was quite good, I'd done a lot with my dad when I was younger. Like, my dad did everything in our house. He always showed me how to use tools and stuff. So I was pretty good with tools and doing stuff. So I worked for one of the builders in town. He used to do a bit of coaching here, actually, before I joined. And I was also, like, claiming unemployment benefit at the time. And I can remember they were like, David's... secretary rang me up, Maggie, lady called Maggie. I don't think she works at British Rowing anymore.
Maggie Netto,
absolute like legend. And David's like anyone that's met David, he's very particular. He's got his own way of doing things, slightly sort of out there, obscure, but you just have to go with it. Because
when you hear he used to be a headmaster, he makes a lot more sense.
It makes perfect sense, right? And then like Maggie rings me up, and she's like, David needs to have a chat with you about some funding. And I was cool, great. Can you come on Wednesday at 2:00? And I was like, sorry, I can't make that. And obviously she went and reported that back to David, and David was like, what, I mean, what? This is like turning an invitation from the Queen down. He was like, yeah, I can imagine his face. He was like, I've asked him to come here. It wasn't an invite.
Yeah.
Like,
I wasn't really
David wants to know why you can't make it. And I was like, I've got to sign on. I can't make it. I'm sorry. Obviously, I got reported back. I remember going to this meeting. I need some funding now. You know, oh, great. Okay, cool. I think he was like, "So no, you don't need to. You know, don't need to be on dole anymore." To do that,
and then presumably at some point then moved into Caversham full time between sort of 03 and 05.
Caversham wasn't built then.
I thought it was like 03, 04? Or was it still training there?
No, it wasn't. So we did pieces at Dorney. So I started training Jurgen and the Matthew and James and that Fours group where Stevie and the Rick and Toby and Josh were all based here.
Steve Williams, Josh
West, Garbert, Rick Dunn. Oh, yeah. So they were all based here. So Jurgen was like, you train here with me for this next period of time. Maybe we try sculling. And I think probably at the time I was like, well, maybe I'd like to go into the 8s group, because the 8s group they'd won a medal in 2003. So that was Alex, TJ, G. But they had their group, and Steve Gunn wasn't really a fan of me at all. So Jurgen was like, well, we'll go get a quads project together, because I was reasonable sculler, so I started sculling here. But that was the first year of the Jurgen's program, and that was looking back now, that was hell. Yeah, because my body just was not ready to do that program, especially in that year. It was he pushed the Olympic year going into it. It was really, really tough. And I think that looking back now, technically I wasn't rowing as well because I was so tired. I was rowing worse. I wasn't as good with like my rest and recovery as I probably should have been as you develop as an athlete. So I was rowing worse and therefore expelling more energy. So that year was definitely inconsistent in terms of like rowing, and I didn't make the quad. And rightly so, I wasn't consistent or good enough. I didn't even race final trials because I was getting ill quite a lot. I think I did an ergo test that year. And yes, there's another story of me blowing up. I think it was before Christmas. I did the trials, then we had an ergo test before Christmas, 2K. And I can remember, I don't feel brilliant, but you got to crack on with this anyway. You can't just be like, I've got a headache, I'm going to not do this, because you're going to be like, get out of here. So I did 6:05, which was horrendous. I think I'd done like 5:50. And the ergo champs might have been 5:53 or 5:55 or something. So then you're like, oh God, this is not good. And it was an awful sight, because I remember Jurgen saying to me afterwards, I was surprised you finished that. Well done for finishing it off. I thought, I'm going to get absolutely nailed here for this, because that was horrendous. But he said, well done for finishing it. And it always resonates with me now, even like coaching or anything, right? Is however bad it is, don't stop. Do not stop. Yeah, that's how never ever stop. It's you can't look at yourself in the mirror. You stop. It's like it's better just to finish it and be miserable, because at least that feeling is going to go away. But if you stop, you're a quitter. Yeah, that is, and and
once you've done it once, you go down a path.
Just do not, no matter how bad it is, do not stop. I know even doing a bit of coaching here now, or like, don't stop. Whatever you do, don't even think about putting the handle down.
Yeah,
I've had an athlete put the handle down and like pick that up now and finish it.
Yeah. No, that's one of the unbreakable rules of rowing. You got to not.
I've just seen too many people get so in their head about it, and then they keep stopping, and then every time it doesn't feel perfectly right, they'll stop again and again. And
there's like a scientific reason for it. Like you hear neuroscientists talk about developing like a special neural pathway in your brain for once you've done an action once, it's easier to then do it again because you've created like a new connection, etc. So it's true. Once you're a quitter, it's easy to be a quitter.
It's easier. Yeah. So then 05, you did go into the 8s program for the 05.
So I joined. So didn't make 04 Athens. Remember watching, obviously, all the racing there before, one of the greatest rowing races ever, right?
Yeah.
Then 05, start back again. I can remember starting back here quite early with Jurgen. Jurgen cycling up and down the bank.
Like a week after the Olympics.
Yeah,
back.
not long after. It is blood, right?
Yeah.
If you love what you do, you don't do a day's work in your life. Probably never said that, but I'm sure it's the way he thinks. It's philosophy for sure. Maybe in Germany might have another way of articulating it. So started back, and then that year was like, well, want to row. They want to build the new. 88 had not done well in Athens. Despite having some great athletes in there. So then joined that program and got into the 8 that year. I think that was maybe now that period 2006, 2005, 2006, some difficult periods in my rowing career. I don't think I understood the rowing stroke. I think I didn't get on with Steve Gunn's coaching. Really, I never spoke about boat feel. I felt he wanted everyone to row like a certain way, not like despite, people having different sort of differences. He wanted to row bolt upright, and I didn't have I think good coaches always give you an understanding of the rowing stroke and what they want you to do. And I really struggled with Steve's coaching, if I'm honest. Right now, I wasn't enjoying rowing and wasn't getting any results as well. Fundamentally, maybe I probably would have, if I'd been getting results but still not understanding it. I'd have a different perception.
I mean, in the perspective of it, you're still making A finals, but just fourth in 05, fifth in 2006.
Yeah, and so I think that was but I put in so much more effort, and I was getting how I would deem worse results.
Yeah,
like, that's a real bad place to be.
Yeah,
and you're putting more of your soul into it, and you're getting worse, right? Especially as like a 24-year-old person, you're like, I want to be improving every day. And physically, I was getting so much better. But rowing wise, technically, I wasn't moving on. I didn't understand the rowing stroke, and I think those 2 years were physically I moved on massively, but technically and psychologically I didn't, because I don't think I was in the right environment there. I was in the right environment. No, we sort of mixed it up. We did a bit of training in London. We did a bit of training here. But fundamentally, I didn't understand Steve Gunn's coaching technique or what he wanted. And there was much talk about the boat and the flow. It was actually, we like, this is our perfect rower, what we see, and then this is what we want everyone to row. So it didn't go to anyone's strengths or anyone's fingerprint of how they row. Mm-hmm. But I fundamentally didn't understand the rowing stroke, I think.
Yeah. It can be difficult sometimes. Like, I think like some of the best coaches I've had, the best thing about them was to be able to describe the same thing in a bunch of different ways. Yeah. Because certain people resonate in certain different. So if you can kind of keep doing that, sometimes that seems to be like, oh fuck, now I know exactly what you're talking about. But it can be difficult, definitely.
Yeah. Plus, it also takes a bit of a skill to not just say this is what I want you to look like when you're rowing, to actually focus on what the blade is doing and how the power is being applied. Because like you said, if you coach to the strengths, then you're going to have each athlete add their own bit of flavor to how the boat is working, and not just like a set system where everyone's just following a bit of a movement, but then you're getting like sort of like shaved off with like your...
It's difficult though. There's no power curves. There's no data to look at. You're not sitting down and looking at the screens and stuff. It's just all got to be off like what the coach says.
Yeah. So what was like the turning point for you technically, would you say?
I think Steve wasn't coaching the 8 anymore, so Mark Banks and John West came into that group. And that was a big turning point for me. Like, it was huge. Like Mark Banks, especially in that first part, they came out to Seville in January, February, and we started rowing. And that was when it really started to click with me, and they started talking about the rowing stroke and how you develop the rowing stroke.
Yeah.
And I think John was brilliant psychologically, and I think Mark was amazing technically. I think Mark's strength was, for me, you were one of the best technical coaches I had, but he would have an ability to, when you were like, God, I am rowing like shit, you know, and you didn't know what was going on. I mean, it's a relatively simple sport, so anyone that's maybe listening to this, like, you know, that says, you know, rowing looks dead simple. It's not, right? It's so difficult. But he would have this ability to unpick your head, you know, in how to break it down simply to get you out of that hole. I'll always be sort of very indebted to him for that, really. And just like his way he articulated the road stroke, not just because he's from Northwest, he's from Rochdale. You're speaking the same dialect.
Yeah. He's always been no nonsense. He tells it how it is. I've always like respected that. It's tough but fair. But yeah, same that kind of era, 07, 08. He'd come down occasionally and just look at us for like one session, and the
great
stuff
eye,
he could do.
Really. And I think for him, he understood that I was a big guy and big guys move a bit differently, and also was trying to maybe get onto the slide too soon and be more sympathetic with your own movements like around the back. And that start. I remember like, and it'd be really simple, like, you know, I was very rushing to get onto the slide. It was always like about getting yourself set at the back, not rushing finish, and just getting yourself organised. Very, very simple stuff, but it all started to like click. You know, started to click, and then I was like, geez, I'm actually rowing all right now. You know, starting to row a lot better. I started rowing a lot better. Did like the work with the work in that period of time with John and Mark. Yeah, it was looking back now, and it was a time I really appreciated that for what they did for me personally.
I think that'd be cool for people to listen to, because there'll be a bunch of people out there who are also working on not rushing the front and taking their time over the back. And like from someone being part of the GB squad, like in an 8 that's maybe not doing what you want, but A finals, you know, it's the same stuff. It's just different degrees of precision and all the way up. But also I think it's interesting. We've also spoke to a lot of other people who would sort of say the same thing, that they didn't really necessarily understand it all or know it all until later on in their career. So I think it's like interesting, because a lot of people sort of feel like, I'm not good enough. You're like, I think everyone thinks they're constantly not good enough. Yeah, there's always time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, there was always those people that are like, yeah, I'm amazing, that say it outwardly, but I'm sure intrinsically that, you know, they're the bullshitters. You know, you're always like doubting yourself. I think I was, you know, the one person that I rode with who, like, come race day was just a different animal, was like Matt Langridge. He was not rubbish at training, but you feel you have to. Yeah, he wasn't the best trainer, but come race day, he was like come alive. Yeah, I'd be like, oh god, I'm really scared. I'm really scared. He'd be like laughing, and you know, he was like, he could turn it on. Like,
people love the pressure.
Yeah, he was almost relished it, right? And I think it probably brought the best out of me, but I was like literally shitting myself. Yeah, literally, I was scared. So it was great. It was great to share with Matt actually in racing, because he was like, he was really confident, but not like, it always felt like just not, it wasn't like bravado. It was like genuine, like this guy's, you know, the real Matt's going to turn up now. And
that's nice to know, and you know you've got someone in your group like that. Yeah. So 07 Worlds, you get bronze.
We had like a mixed. You know, that was definitely a building season, right? I think we won a medal at one or two of the World Cups, but we were inconsistent. You know, but it was getting more consistent. The performance level was increasing. Munich World Championships, obviously, love love Munich now. Worked in Munich for a few years as well since. So, like, you know, Munich's a special place to me. I think it's a special place to Jurgen as well, because there's 72 games there. And he always had some good stories about Munich, and I love that anyone that's been to not everyone will have been to the lake. The lake's beautiful, it's crystal clear. It's a manufactured rowing lake, but you know it doesn't look like that. And there's always those huge carp that are like swimming. I mean, you can see the bottom, the markers. Munich, you know, it's got the every 500 you go underneath the markers, the wires, the markers on. Yeah. So for me, it was like, you know, I love German. It was so German. I love German cars, German beer, I've got a German dog. It was so German. I absolutely, I loved Bavaria. And so it would, you know, Munich World Championships. I think I can't remember much of the races building up to. I think we did a rep. Yeah, we did, and we pushed. I think we pushed Germany quite hard in the rep. I could be totally wrong here. But we got into the final and we were like, we can do something here in the final. And then one of the bowmen got ill, Tom Parker. I don't know what he'd been doing. He was like, you know, he never felt he looked after himself. That you know, that else he was probably like licking the toilet flush or something. You know, Tom, as a dare. And then so TJ was the spare, and then TJ came in.
Not a bad spare. Tom James.
Yeah. You know, I got to row with Tom a lot in my rowing career. Amazing guy. Yeah. You know, like he came in. We were going well, and he came slotted in at bow. And then we had that race in the final. We won that bronze. That was, and then you're like, right now we're back. You know, the Canadians were in front, and you know, I'd seen Jake Wetzel obviously in Athens. So you know, and Mike Sprackland coached him. And I always made a big effort to speak to Mike whenever I was at a rowing gata, because like I knew he was obviously coaching the Canadian team, but I was really interested to see what he thought, or, you know, he's an amazing coach, one of the most successful rowing coaches of all time.
Ex-British head coach as well.
For the women. Won the first women's sculling medal, or first women's rowing medal here. So, like, he's like a hero. I ironically bump into him the odd time here now, so he has lunch with some of the things. So, yeah, and you know, but then it was really thought actually like we can do something next year, right? We can, you get a bronze medal. It was good bronze. We pushed the Germans hard. So then, like that season going into Beijing, you know, like now we could go from actually despairing in 2006, to 12 months later being right now we can really do something in Beijing. So. Yeah, the mindset sort of the goals totally shifted there.
Was it again another step up on the program that year in 08? And also, like, how secure did you feel in that boat? Was selection a big issue still?
Actually, so I've not mentioned this, is like actually when Mark and John took over coaching at the 8, then also Robin Bourne-Taylor and Al Hefkett came in. So it seems Robin had been out of the team, like he joined the army, then he wanted to row again.
We had Al on here,
and he managed to convince like Al to go row with him. Yeah, and Al's like great rower. But those two coming in that year in 2007 transformed. You know, there was you in effect if you count two of the coaches as like the part of the unit. Then you're changing like 40% of the area. Like the philosophy changed. Al and Robin came in. Robin was real tough cookie, engineer, Oxford, you know, smart, really smart guy, and you know, a tough racer. And Al came in with all these. Al is great, naturally talented rower, and also physically very good as well.
Yeah.
He came in injected, so Al's always got a great like story. He always tells you some stories. I mean, I don't know how many of them are actually true. So like old war stories, like Uncle Albert.
Yeah.
But I shared a room with him in Seville in his first camp. And actually, and I think one day we were like messing about after training, and he's like, directly comes out of the bathroom. He's got a mankini on. I was like, why have you put a mankini to training camp? But it was, it was really cool. But yeah, they changed a big. They were big, big change into like Beijing, and then obviously I think Matt and Colin decided that they'd want to medal in the pair, and we decided that we really wanted to go for the 8 that year in the Beijing year.
Yeah.
So the expectation, obviously, in the team for your 8 going into that Beijing season was like, okay, cool. We came 3rd at the Worlds. 2 years ago, we were 6th. Are we going to challenge for gold? Like, how did you approach training?
I mean, I think everyone's different. I was very pragmatic, right? I'm just like, I'm going to train as hard as I can, try and be more consistent than I was last year, like not missing sessions, training, and then I'm going to put myself in the best possible position to give myself the best chance of winning gold. It was not like I'm going to try and. I think some people like, we do it as we're going to try and win gold, and I was like, well, we've got like all this winter training to do where I've got to do that on my own anyway, right? And once you've done the World Championships, you're like, well, everyone's back in the pot anyway, so depends what boat are they going to do next year. Like, maybe I can get in the 4, maybe I might be in a pair, the top boat might be different. I've seen it before. I'd seen it in 2003 when Matthew and James didn't win top boat, top athletes, and then Jurgen decided we're going to do a 4 as the top boat. So I'd seen that already. So I was like, I'm going to be in the 8, and and actually later in my career, I was probably actually like, I've been through that was really beneficial because I didn't have an affiliation to one boat or another. I just was like, well, I'm going to try and be more consistent, be a better, like make my engine better, and then obviously technically is like make the chassis and suspension better.
Process driven. I hear it a lot. It's like if you're aiming for like the outcome, you're not doing the most you can to get there. If you're actually just aiming to be better every day, be the best version of whatever you're doing, be as good as it can, then the outcome is success. That's
forget about the outcome. But but I knew we could. The strength of the team that we could do. Looking at the athletes they had. Hodgin, Pete, Stevie.
Similarities.
TJ, Matt. Then even if you looked like just behind the team, like the spares. Gregors was in fact ended up being the spare.
Yeah, Alex Gregory.
Yeah. So you knew that there's a good chance we can do something pretty special.
How was the season in general, like World Cups and stuff, after being selected for the 8 in 08?
So selection was, I think I rode with Alex that year. I can't remember where we came, but we did pretty well. Alex would have said probably it wasn't very well. I think we did all right final trials. I can't remember where we were. Pretty
make it up now. No one remembers.
Somebody will
on that one.
Some like fat skull or whatever his name is will be like, I know you came for. So anyway, I can't remember where we came, but we did all right anyway. I think it might have been the last year it was in Harswinkle actually as well. Possibly.
So a year after in 09, we did Harswinkle. That was my first.
So then we
trials.
did some seat racing. Afterwards, I remember I did quite well in the seat racing, so there was some sort of like me and Stevie were swapping in and out of we did a bit of training in the 4 for a bit. I ended up in the 8, which was I think I was really happy with. I was like, And then we started the races, and I'm trying to think I can't remember where the World Cup season was. I think maybe Poznan, it might have been the last one. Then there was Lucerne. And I can't remember where they were. And for the life of me, I can't actually remember.
You've done too many World Cups for me to write them all down. I've just sticking to the Worlds. But
I think we were a bit. I think in.
I mean, how did it in general?
There was some selection going on
still
within the H unit, which is right. You want to keep it. You want to keep it rolling. It's definitely how I would do it now. If I were in coaching and if I was selecting, you want to keep it rolling and keep the willing replacement of someone right next to them.
Yeah, save seats get a little bit too comfy.
Well, I mean, I don't, but it's just it pushes the whole standard on.
Yeah.
So there was some selection.
Plus, shit happens, so you want to have an athlete that's ready to jump in and then not be like 4 months.
You've got to bring up the bottom end, and I think we ended up trying. We had tried Alex at 7, maybe at one of the World Cups, and we weren't. It wasn't going quite as well. Alex, it was going better with Alex when Alex was at bow. You can see he's probably like in the back, like whipping everyone. And we tried Robin. Yeah, we tried Robin Bourne Taylor at 7. Then we tried Matt at 7. I don't know where Matt had been rowing in between. In the meantime, though, because he was in the 8 all season. Well, I can't for the life of me remember.
Was it a pair with?
That was the year before.
Oh right, yeah.
So Josh was always in front of me, and Furious Tom Lucy was behind me.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
we should get Tom Lucy. Jeez, that'd be a good.
All
right.
So but then we started. Eventually, we finished the World Cup season, and we put Matt at 7.
Yeah.
Colin at stroke, Al at 6. Al was always like gutted. I think he loved stroking.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but I mean, Colin was, Colin, and that's when it started to click. I think it really started. We were trying a lot of stuff out that season. It really started to click. And then we obviously disappeared up the mountain.
Yeah.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
Matt hated. But that made me a little bit more because he hated it so much. It was just so miserable about, hey, up here, the weather's crap. And I was like, this is the best place ever. I absolutely loved it. Silveretta was like, so that was, probably going to live up there if I had the choice. Loved that camp. We had
good camp.
Great camp, great teamwork ethos. Because I don't know, has anyone spoke about Silveretta before on this?
A little bit, yeah.
So,
but not in detail.
You go up to, you fly to Zurich, and then you get on the coach, and I think Pinsent might have started this, after the Battle of Hastings or something. We get on the coach, and then we'd run a book on how long it would take you to get up to the mountain, the huts where we stayed, and it was an old army barracks at the foot of the dam. If anyone have a look at it, it's brilliant. It's like Rocky-esque, but obviously not American. And they would run a book on how long it was. And it was always like 250, 247, 253. It'd be like 3 hours anyway, and we'd be really exciting about. You get to the foot of the mountain, it'd be on a certain time, and then you have to go up round. I think it's maybe 13 hairpin bends. So the coach would occasionally be someone coming the other way. And then the coach would have to reverse it, and then so you'd see it click past 246, and everyone's you're literally like a pack of wolves, just shouting. Obviously, you've got to make your own fun in these miserable situations, and then you get up there, and then that's when the camp started. But then running the book was actually the great thing. I don't know, it was I don't know how much somebody won, but it was always who you've got 2
bragging rights.
You're bragging rights for the next. And then, obviously, Jurgen stored all the weight training equipment in the basement of one of the huts. And a lot of it was from East Germany. So it was all from the GDR. Mm-hmm. So we'd have a chain gang, down into the basement, and then we'd, one throw the weights in the bars and all this, like archaic like weightlifting, perfectly functional, but yeah, out of the basement, and then we throw it on one of the Ivecos and take it up to when we did weights, like where the snowplow was kept.
Yeah.
So it was, I just loved all that to it. And then the barracks, you had bunk beds. No, actually, when you started, you were in one of the huts with bunk beds. And that was all seen as when I was the spare, I got sent into the one with bunk beds, and someone like the bottom boat would be in the bunk bed ones. They were kicking off. Like when I was the spare, they were kicking off. What are we doing? Shit. And I was like, this is amazing. I love it in here. And I'm bunk to yourself, right? It was so good. But I can remember someone kicking off at it. It was like Simon Cottle. And he was always quite an abrasive character. And he'd always play shit music. I can remember one day when we was spare, and we got so pissed off with it. We went and found the like motherboard to the electrics, switched it off. But it was so I loved Silveretta, and then you'd set the course up as well, because the lake is the highest in Europe, I think, natural lake. And we'd set the course out,
Will you do it yourself?
Yeah, we'd set the course out ourselves. So you go tie it on a rock.
Nice.
Over on the other side of the lake, you tow it out in the boat. And that was the one time that one of the athletes was allowed to like go in the lawn, coaching lawn. So it was like a big issue. And then usually it was like Matthew and Matthew's area. Matthew was like, oh, I'd like to, I've got to be driving the launch. And then I think it was Hodgie after that. What I always like, my job was like, I would control the spool. I was like the spool controller. And I was like, that was my job. I loved doing that. I don't know who does it now. I probably wasn't as good as me. But I was the spool controller.
I want to find out if you're the spool controller and you're listening, or if you know who the spool controller is, let us know.
And then it would obviously like the guy was like pulling it out and then clipping the buoys on to it, and then it would tow it out, and then the launch would tow it out, and then they'd attach it to this rock at the other end, and then it was like we'd time how long that would take, and then the course would be out. I looked amazing, right? I just sort of back there now doing it, and then you'd set the course out. So it was like massive, without like in the corporate world, there was talk about like do team building exercise, what do you do for team building, all that nonsense. But Jurgen did that like subconsciously. That whole camp was about building that team. I loved that, especially being spool control. I wasn't asked about being in the 15 horsepower. For me, it was like it's only a 15 horsepower on the launch, right? So I wasn't bothered about that. But I was the spool controller.
That's such a good point about team building done like in an old school way, because you just organically engineer the situation where it's just that's where it arises, rather than like, right, we've all got a bond and we're all going to talk about how amazing we're going to be when it comes to the Olympics. Like none of that. Yeah. In terms of, obviously that was the final camp before the Olympic Games. What were
that was your work. That was the work camps. That was high altitude camp. You do like 18 days, high altitude, and you'd sort of run through all the sort of periods of training. Like the first maybe week would be, you do quite a few ergos, do a lot of like distance work. Second week, you do a bit more, maybe UT1. You clock up some big mileage, and you'd be in the boat a lot. You'd be doing like 240, 250k a week. At 2,050 meters. So that's like a lot of mileage at that. And then the last few days, it starts coming down and do a speed order generally on the last day, and then you have to do everything in reverse. You've got to take the course down. So I was back on spool controller duty. I just didn't officially name it. That was its name. So, and then you pack everything back, the chain gang back down into his basement. And then actually, because what's his name, that Austrian weirdo Fritzl, and never, he wasn't around back then. But if it was today, if I was still in the team, I'd be like, I'll get into the Fritzl. So you do everything, and then you come down the mountain. There was never how long is it going to take us to get back down the mountain? And then you have your next sort of race. Normally, I'm trying to think if it was in Eggballette before Beijing. I can't remember it, but you generally go on a warm weather one. I think it was Egberlet. Can't remember someone. But you do in a nice warm weather camp. It was either Egberlet or Avis in Portugal.
Did you
for 10 days or so?
Makes sense. Did you feel excitement knowing that you're going to compete for your country at the Olympic Games? What was that like going through your head?
I don't think for me, I was like excited. Of course I was excited, but I'm not a very like excitable sort of person.
Yeah.
My wife's like, you're literally don't get excited about anything. And you're like, well, I'm like, well, I do actually. Like, but it's all like random stuff, and I don't sort of portray it externally unless it's something completely random. But I think maybe the one thing I can remember was going to get the kit, going to pick up your kit for the Olympics. You're going to go and pick up your kit, and I went because Al was still in the army. He was like, "I'm going to nick one of the vans from the barracks, and we'll go up in the van to pick up all the gear."
Nice.
So I was thinking I was really excited about going to get the kit because, yeah, I was like, he's getting you an Olympic kit.
That's pretty much what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, I was an Adidas fan, so I love Adidas for the sponsor, and you get to go there and, you know, go around and like try on all the stuff and pick it up. And ironically, like most of it's still in its packets in my sister's barn. It's never been opened because I'm like wore one t-shirt.
Nice.
So that was the thing, and I can remember me and Al, we went, it was at the NEC. Mm-hmm. We went over there for the day, got the kit and came back. And do you know what? I can't even remember where it was in London. It was Loughborough in London. We did Loughborough Uni. But I did it on my own. But when me and Al, we drove up in this white transit van they'd nicked from the barracks. It was like a white high top, and he wouldn't let me drive it. We went off in the back of the van, and like obviously we met everyone there, and they could bring, you know, we could put some kit in the van on the way back. So that was a real, for me, that was a real cool day out, and I remember that just because, you know, it was in the back of the high top, right?
Proper white van man.
I think a lot of people as well like think that the Olympics is like, you go to this race called the Olympics, and then it's in this like surreal place like Narnia, and there's all these crews that you've raced that you've never raced before. Really, it's like
just another regatta.
It's another race. Like, it's Gordon. He must have been there like 1,000 times.
Yeah,
and all these people I've raced before.
Yeah.
So it doesn't like, but then people that don't understand, like,
because they tune in,
because you rode and you know you race the same people. It isn't like some like random. But you don't go through a wardrobe and then you're in the. It's not like that, right? Is it? Which is. Do you know what? Sort of. Sometimes you might dream that you wish it was like that.